My name is John Kosich. I'm the former 11 o'clock anchor at Channel 40. I was there from 1990 to 94. But in so many ways, my history with the station goes back well beyond that. When I was a kid growing up in Philadelphia, I was always interested in television news, and we always watched Channel 40 when we would go down to the shore. When I was a senior in high school, we're down in Ocean City, and I decided, you know what, I want to go see the station. So I looked up the number in the phone book, and I gave them a call. Who do you want to talk to? Was the owner there? Howard Green gets on the phone. Doesn't know me from Adam. I tell him who I am, what I want to do. And he's like, by all means, come on in. I'm like, awesome. Being a kid from Philadelphia, I'm like, what's the bus route? What are you talking about? There's no bus. He's like, where are you at? I said, I'm in the south end of Ocean City. He said, all right, be at this intersection, 9 a.m. the next morning. I'm going to have Jane Stark pick you up. Next morning, Jane Stark, the general sales manager at the time, came by, picked me up. I went out with a reporter that day in the field, Connie Keene, got to sit in on the newscast that night with Michael Sherman. And at the end of the day, it was Michael who drove me back to Ocean City. That was my first real taste of television news. And it was on that day that I knew this was something that I wanted to do, and this was a place I was going to work. And I would stay in touch with Howard and Jane over the course of the next 4 years through Temple University and through my first job out in St. Joe, Missouri. And then in June of 1990, there was an opening, and I had a chance to come home.
When I came home to the South Jersey area after spending some time with a television station in Missouri, I found the more things changed, the more things stayed the same. In Missouri, I dealt with stories of local interest, cattle ranching, farming, the stories which made up the backbone of the Farm Belt. While in South Jersey, the Jersey Shore, what's happening in Trenton, the casinos, they're the issues of local concern. But the one thing that remains the same with me, no matter where I am, is my concern with informing the people. I like to talk to the people of South Jersey and find out what's on their mind, and hopefully better inform them of the world around them.
So one of the first stories I got to cover was with Merv Griffin, who owned resorts at the time. And I remember going out on the story and Jeff Whitaker saying, Merv watches. And I'm like, yeah, sure he does. But sure enough, he did.
Pleasure. Good to see you.
Pleasure.
I enjoy the station.
Oh, thank you very much.
Watching that.
You know,
I like going into cities and watching. I don't watch the network stuff. I like watching that news right there and then.
And it was not unusual to go out on a story with Merv and have him tell you something that you did last week or the night before.
how you doing?
I saw the little piece though. You did part of it, yeah.
That was pretty heady stuff, but you have to realize this was really a unique time for TV 40. It was pre-internet, not a lot of people had cable, and we represented a loyal local audience that could see a story at 6 and be over at the casinos for a show at 8. So with the exception of a Sinatra that didn't do interviews, pretty much any headliner that came into town, the casinos made available to you. So this was a small market technically, but the people that you were getting to meet, the news you were getting to cover, the people you were sitting down and talking to, it was simply unparalleled anywhere else. I remember meeting Tony Bennett for the first time over at Trump's Castle. And he said to me, now, John, what do you do? And I said, I'm the local 11 o'clock anchor at the NBC affiliate. And he goes, oh, no kidding. Next time I'm in town, give me a call. We'll get together. We'll do a show. And I was like, me? And the next time he came into town, I called over to Bob Barrow at the time. And I said, listen, Tony told me to call him. We set it up and we sat down, the two of us. And we did a half-an-hour special looking back on his then 40 years in show business.
Any plans to slow down? Are you just going to continue?
I don't think he should retire. I think George Burns and Bob Hope and all the great ones like Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire, they went right to the end. They just kept swinging right through it. Picasso, Casals. I think good performers don't dare stop. They just keep going.
If we could just close with the last line of your signature song.
When I come home to you, San Francisco, your golden sun will shine for me.
Tony Bennett, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I wish all interviews went as smoothly. I remember Andrew Dice Clay after Joey Buttafuoco backed out as his opening act in a pay-per-view event. I'm still trying to decipher that one.
So I figured, because this is a... Stop laughing at me. Don't laugh at me. Because, you know, I'm a comic, so I can laugh, you know, because it's a comedy show.
Do you have any alternatives at this point?
Whisk.
Whisk?
No,
Another classic TV 40 moment came from me one day when we didn't have any news cars. And Jeff Whitaker says Jane Stark's going to let us borrow her car, the general manager. So I go over and I pick up the keys, and this was her baby. So I gently go downstairs and I get into the car, get the beers all set, and put it in reverse, and right into a pole. Drove it around, picked up my photographer, John Sinclair, 6'5" guy, but his eyes were as big as he was tall because he had that look of, do you want me to send a mass card or flowers because you're dead either way? We go to Atlantic City, shoot our story, and we're just sweating this out. I mean, this is my last day at TV 40. I know it. And I go back and I tell Jane what had happened, and luckily she was okay with it. It took me a couple days to recover, though. This year marks 25 years in television for me, and I got to say that the 4 years that I spent in Atlantic City are among my favorite. Not just because you're living at the beach and you're covering great stories, but it was the people that I work with. I mean, we were all in this together. We were young, we were hungry, figuratively and literally, but there was a camaraderie there. There was something to be said for. And I remember I was there for about 2.5 years when my first news director from Missouri called me up. He was in Binghamton now. And he said, "John, how much you making?" And I told him. He said, "I can double it. I need a main anchor." And I was like, ka-ching. I mean, I'm vision of everything I'm going to do with the money. And I go up to Binghamton and I saw the station and I saw the city. And I went back to Ocean City. And a day or two later, I called him up and I said, "Dave, I know I got to grow up someday, but not yet." And I stayed for another 1.5 years. I left TV 40 in May of 1994, went to Scranton. I was there for 5 years. That's where I met my wife and we got married 17 years ago. From Scranton, I went to Buffalo for 3 years, and then we've been in Cleveland now for 12 years. And I've had a phenomenal opportunity here in Cleveland and a chance to do some great stories and interview some big people. And one of the biggest being last year when 3 girls were discovered after being missing for 10 years, held captive in a Cleveland home. When I was out there that night, the interview that I did with a neighbor who helped rescue them, Charles Ramsey, turned into an internet video viral sensation, has close to 20 million views.
What was the reaction on the girls' faces? I can't imagine to see the sunlight, to be around people.
I knew something was wrong when a little pretty white girl ran into a black man's arms. Something is wrong here. Dead giveaway.
But I got to tell you, as I stood there that night on Seymour Avenue, my thoughts at one point were back in South Jersey, because I was thinking about Mark Heimbaugh, an 11-year-old who disappeared from Delhaven in 1991. His story is one that I had shared over the years with one of the girls' families who was missing, Gina DeJesus, because Gina's mom could relate to the anguish that Maureen Heimbaugh, Mark's mom, had felt. And as I stood there that night and I started thinking about the joy that the DeJesus family was about to experience, I wondered, would this be a joy that, someday the Heimbaugh family would get to share and feel? So that, I left Channel 40 20 years ago, but Channel 40 never left me.